Welcome to American History Notes, where I relate to you things I've learned about American history, and I have conclusions I draw from those things. You might not agree with my conclusions, but I hope that you'll at least study these things so that you have your own conclusions that you've gotten from studying Code put forward in 1611 and were called, quote, laws divine, moral, and martial, or Dale's laws. Virginia was on the verge of disaster with a tenuous hold on the new continent, and these rules were a kind of military justice and very harsh. The colonies each had unique structures to their systems, which deviated widely from the English models due to the extremely fragile condition of the colonies. But at the base of the system was a single magistrate, the justice of the peace, who handled petty crimes in his locality. The basic trial court was called the county court and was an administrative body as well as a court. There were higher courts in the cities, and in some rare instances, a person could even appeal to the overlords in England. Puritan justice was inquisitorial, at least in the 17th century. Judges who were religious and political leaders dominated criminal justice. They had a firm belief that they had a right to rule in the name of God and that they were doing the Lord's work. The state and the courts were, in effect, the military and force arm of the state supported church. Judges ran the show, juries were rarely called, except in cases where the death penalty could be invoked. And in colonial New Haven, juries were never called. The magistrates had the aim of squeezing a confession and repentance out of the accused. If a defendant demanded a jury, this could be considered a case of obstinacy and rebellion on the accused's part. Much like today, if a person is offered a plea bargain, he must consider whether or not it is worth risking the fury of the court if found guilty by insisting upon a jury trial rather than pleading guilty. This is particularly the case among the poorest defendants in our society, and, quote, firing up the jury by rejecting a plea bargain can have terrible consequences for such a defendant, whether or not he or she is actually guilty. The magistrate asked all the questions back then, and the suspect answered. No lawyers for either side were present. If the magistrate felt that the accused was innocent or the proof too weak, he could dismiss the case. If there was good evidence or if the suspect confessed, this case was scheduled for trial. Until the trial, the defendant was usually allowed to go free and pursue his daily life. In New Haven Colony, no bail was required. A bail bond is money or property you put up guaranteeing you will appear in court. Apparently, in the early years of this colony, the warning to appear at trial or else was enough, as the recorded cases show that only 4 out of 201 defendants fled, or as they say down south, used to say down south, quote, posted bush bond. The magistrate would not send a person to trial unless he was pretty sure of his guilt. In all but 14 of the aforesaid 201 cases, the verdict was guilty on all counts. Historians insist, though, that these magistrates took their duties seriously and that the trial was no charade or, quote, kangaroo court. It was a ritual that was taken very seriously. In fact, criminal justice was an important social drama in the very early years of our country. Values were affirmed, the establishment's authority was confirmed, and right and wrong were made very clear. Courthouses were filled to overflowing as citizens came to see what would befall their neighbors under the patriarchal hand of the judge. Theatrical elements came out particularly at hangings, but also at whippings, brandings, and pillorying. This was a face-to-face society and not mechanical and faceless like our own. At hangings, a final confession and a prayer were extremely significant to the local community. Now we're going to talk a little bit about process and trials and stuff next, but we'll stop for now. And I thank you for listening, and I hope that you'll just study this stuff, look into it yourself. Disagree with me, that's fine, okay? But learn about American history. Thank you. Have a good day.